And I just want to quickly make a note. I shared in the chat earlier, but Venerable Bonaparte will be speaking tomorrow because he is so generous with his time at an event that ICRD is doing in partnership with the Alliance for Peace Building. And Reverend Dr. Gary Mason, who was our first speaker on day one of this webinar, will also be speaking. So if you're interested in hearing more, please check out that event. But I'm extremely honored to keep the momentum going and introduce our new speaker. I'll give a brief introduction again for those of you who joined in after the opening. So next we'll be hearing from Friar Ivo Markovic. He emerged as a force for reconciliation in the midst of the violent conflict that followed the breakup of Yugoslavia in 1992. So during the war, Friar Markovic was an educator, advocate, and force for peace, and he took immediate actions after the war to help facilitate reduction of hostilities, bring about reconciliation and return and peace building. And even today, Friar Markovic is very still involved with the multi-ethnic interfaith choir he started while living as a refugee in Croatia with other displaced Bosnians. So I'm going to give him the stage now and let us hear from his wisdom and experiences. Thank you so much for your time today, Friar Markovic.
Thank you, Mariam, for introducing me. Thank you, James, for inviting me, and greetings to all participants. The title of my presentation today is The Echo of Peace Movement in the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. It is mostly my personal reflections. I have some presentation, so excuse. So it is here. So I must start from the beginning. Excuse. So I find that peace is fundamental movement, trend, and feeling of life in the contemporary world. My intention is to explain how the peace movement arrived and came to exist, and what was the echo during the war in former Yugoslavia. I will try to present it through my personal encounter with this process. The year 1986 was one of most revolutionary years in history of the mankind, for sure in the last millennium. There were too many problems after World War II and the awakening of the new perspectives in young generation. And then happened a social explosion full of individual personal frustrations. Young people all over the world rose up in revolts against the world their parents were leaving to them. It was one of the strongest generational conflicts in your history. The older generation parents were confused as they didn't know what it was the young people were looking for. There was one popular sentence describing the young people revolt. We don't know what we wish, but we will have it just now, immediately. The war in Vietnam and the racial conflict in the United States amplified these generational conflicts. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were killed in 1986. Personally, I was fulfilled these trends and the energy of the revolution. I wanted to be part of it, integrated in it, but I couldn't fully understand what was going on. I couldn't articulate it. First articulation of this feeling I found in music. My generation listened and sang the songs of Beatles and the rock groups who came to exist following their music trend. 1989 to 70, I had to go to Yugoslav army. I was serving for 18 months, and it was most disturbing time in my life. I found that army officers were most unhappy in their profession, extremely frustrated, leaving mostly just to advance in their careers, and often fighting alcoholism and similar addictions. They also contaminated the soldiers with such nonsense, often creating unbearable conditions. After finishing army service in 1970, I started to study theology. Together with a group of students, we established Christian rock group. We started writing our own songs, and they were mostly peace songs. We discovered that peace is fundamental religious theme in our time. We found that peace is a religion of contemporary world. So I discovered the paradigm of the year 1986. It was the beginning of peace, feminist, and ecological movement. Now I would like to describe how the communists in former Yugoslavia encountered with peace movement. At the beginning of 80s, our rock group prepared the LP long play titled, "Who is That Loving Unknown Me?" We had to ask permission from the communist government to publish it. They prohibited the record with the explanation that it was a pacifist project. I put in an appeal on this decision, asking for an explanation to be invited to the commissions at the seat of the government. I was received in the office for appeals by private individuals. In the office, I found a large platform with the table occupied with 3 men. I was offered a seat down on the floor on a bench like the ones you find in a park. The communication was extremely asymmetric and violent. From above, they asked me about my appeal. I stated that I don't understand why our project was refused and why pacifism is considered dangerous. One of them, with the authoritative and assertive voice, explained that our socialist communist system, for our communist socialist system, pacifism is extremely dangerous ideology. We educate, he explained, our youth in socialist system of values where the readiness to defend our homeland and its socialist system is highest value. We have always to live in vigilance and be ready to defend our society. We educate our youth in hate against our enemies, but not in any type of decadent pacifism. I opposed to him stating that our pacifism means to educate our youth in love for peace, for nonviolence, and love to all human beings, including our homeland. They were embarrassed with my arguments and recommended me to go to Croatia, it is other republic, where they will support me to publish it there. And so it happened. What was interesting is that our LP was forbidden because of the next verses by Bosnian poet Anđelko Vuletić. You see it on the screen. When I become so big as an ant, I will build my house with my passion, and no one will force me in armed forces, nor on brother, nor on blood. I personally find that such omnipresence of violence in communism had strong influence on atrocities committed later in the Yugoslavian war. Peace movement in Yugoslavia had a very strong growth in 70s and 80s years, especially within the groups of people who opposed to communist ideology. Peace movement was a type of opposition to communism. At the beginning of the 90s, it was clear that former Yugoslavia was falling apart. Peace movement was very strong, activated to escape violence and war in peaceful solving the accumulated conflicts. But the old communist bureaucrats army officers and policemen who had the privileges in the Yugoslavia system rallied around Slobodan Milosevic, seeing him as a last hope to protect their privileged status in the society. In that effort, they would not stop short of anything, including the war. The war exploded all the accumulated hatred and aggressive energy, resulting in terrible atrocities. In the war, peacemakers can only work on stopping the war and on humanitarian survival. I was expelled from Bosnia to Croatia, where I worked in one ecumenical and interreligious information agency, informing the world about what was really going on. Because like in any war, most of the information was propaganda. Also, I worked with journalists coming from all the world, as well as with different religious emissaries who were sent to find out how to help suffering people in the war. We Bosnian Franciscans looked for possibilities to stop the war, starting many initiatives, appeals, organizing conferences, all of which had remarkable results in stopping the war between Croats, Catholics, and Bosnian Muslims, and paving way to Dayton Agreement 1995 when the war was stopped. Before Dayton Agreement, I was invited to the United States. The goal of this mission was to influence the United States government to stop their isolationist policy and to compel Clinton administration to send their soldiers to stop the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the organization of Baptist and Mennonite Church, I traveled to the United States, visiting different religious communities, universities, media, and meeting people of political influence like congressmen, mayors, religious leaders, and politicians. Probably my mission had some influence. USA took their responsibility for the war, and they finally intervened in former Yugoslavia, stopping the catastrophic war in Bosnia with Dayton Agreement in 1995. Just days after the Dayton Agreement, I was sent of my Franciscan community back to Bosnia to start projects of healing and reconciliation inspired with Franciscan spirituality. After such a terrible suffering, the people in Bosnia were deeply traumatized and hopeless. Bosnian experts, while vocations on human beings, were not educated how to deal with all the spiritual and psychological wounds acquired in the war by the Bosnian people. Therefore, it was needed to educate physicians, teachers, social workers, religious workers, how to deal with the trauma and how to heal these wounds. With help from outside, especially from the United States and Europe, there was organized systematic education of these experts. I personally took opportunity to contact and invite my friends, Mennonite experts for peace, healing, and reconciliation. And together we organized several seminars for Catholic and Orthodox priests, as well as imams working in local religious communities, parishes, and jamaats. Jamaat is parish in Islamic community. Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding from New York awarded me in 1998 with Peace Activist Award, enabling me that way to come in conflict with many peace NGOs in the world. You see on this picture, Kofi Annan, Elie Wiesel, Liv Ullmann, actors from Sweden, Cardinal O'Connor, and so when I received this award. I just decided to use the positive trend of interreligious dynamic understanding of religion, dynamic understanding and spirituality of religions to promote reconciliation. Especially many NGOs organized very creative projects of interreligious communication and cooperation. I established the music choir named Pontanima. Pont is bridge, anima, soul, so it's bridge among souls, inviting people from all religions and beliefs to sing so-called symphony of religions. It was a very successful project that had success also outside Bosnia. The Choir Pontanima was a powerful tool for reconciliation. Pontanima performed in Bosnia some 600 concerts in 25 years. Some 700 people sang in Pontanima during the time. In the Symphony of Religions, we sing paradigms, first of all of Abrahamic religions, Jewish, Orthodox, Islamic, Catholic, as well as contemporary religious paradigm. Very different religious paradigms in one concert create very inspirational spiritual unity. I define it. Pontanima sings in one concert what will happen in real life in the next 30, 50 years. Project Pontanima had very strong echo in the world and was invited to visit many countries. Here you see the Pontanima received in Doha is highest award of Islamic world. I'm very proud for it. Also, here, President Holland of France gave us Jacques Chirac Peace Award. So, peace for people in Bosnia has the highest value. I know that because I participate in a project named Living Library. Traveling through Bosnia, I'm meeting and having dialogue with many young people. Bosnia has accumulated all sorts of problems after the terrible war. But what is most important, Bosnia is living in peace. And we slowly is solving its problems. Generally, we must not forget that peace is fundamental value in the souls of our contemporary humankind. Pope Francis published the encyclic Fratelli Tutti, drafting a profile of a ideal contemporary human being, global citizen. Highest value is peace, then human rights, first of all, social justice. I would add to this list inclusivism and inspiration with spirituality from arts and religions. Let me conclude. Despite all the conflicts, wars and tensions, peace is highest value in the souls of the people in our world. That peace energy must be transformed in stopping the wars. Like the war was stopped in Bosnia, so the wars in Syria, Ukraine, Ethiopia, and elsewhere must be stopped, and all dangerous tensions in the world must be prevented. Now, I would like small symphony of religions my choir Pontanima sings. It is only 4 minutes. I hope you will like it. There is written which paradigm we sing.
Ivo, a quick question for you. While you're trying to get the video, would you like us to get some questions from the participants?
Friar Markovic, do you need any help? We can share the video on our end if that's helpful. I'm not sure if he can hear us.
Mariam, perhaps we can turn to some questions, and hopefully Friar Markovic can find the video and also can hear the questions. I'm not sure if the audio is not working for you.
Yeah.
Excuse. I'm not so skillful to manipulate with this. Excuse, I didn't see video, only there was sound. Did you hear sound? I hope you have.
No, Friar Markovic, we didn't hear or see the video or the sound. I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse, I don't know what was it. Sorry.
It's okay.
Quite all right.
If you want to, you can share the video link.
Yeah, I will put video link on your address later. Excuse, I'm not so skillful, so.
No,
That's quite all right. We can share it even towards the end of the session today, when we move into, before we move into the breakout sessions, if that's all right with you, once we get the video link. I think in the meantime, maybe we can direct some questions your way. Friar Markovic, we have about 5 minutes left. So there is a question from Harold Jacoby, where he asks you, he says, thank you for your perseverance for peace. What are some things you continue to do to lift your spirits and that drive you to continue your peace initiatives?
I don't know, did I fully understand your question? I find spiritual strength to work for peace. Is it so? Is it the question so?
Yes, that's what I understand it to be, yes.
Okay. So I find, first of all, important is really faith for me. Faith is surrendering to God, to God's coming, to revelation. And it is very important. I think that I live very spiritual, very strong spirituality. And also it is very important to be active, working for peace, active in human life, that is this combination from one side, taking inspiration from the faith, from studying, from spirituality, reading, and on the other side from activity. So that I find combining such a rhythm of life, I find that that is my way of life and acting. So.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer. And I think it relates to a lot of people that joined us today. I see we have another question from Christina. She's asking, I was wondering as an educator how we can further support peace studies. as few individuals challenge war, but many systems find peace advocacy dangerous. So if you can maybe talk a little bit about the risks that come with challenging violence and doing peace work and how to respond to that.
In my presentation, I spoke so much about feeling, especially by young people in Bosnia. Highest value by these young people is peace. I think that is really important. I think it is so general feeling in our world, but we have so much violence, and also the children, young people, are in temptation to follow, for example, violent ideologies and so. And that is therefore it is important, especially for religions, for the schools, educate young people for non-violence, especially personal education for non-violence. And then I think we in religions forgot presence of non-violence, for example, in Evangel, in Bible, in Quran. So we take from these books something what comes from environment of violence. I think that is extremely important for educating system in our world to include very important education for non-violence, especially religions and schools, also families. So it is generally needed. I think it is also answer to the needs, spiritual needs of people of our world.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer. And for those of you that were with us yesterday, we had Marudal from India talking about the importance of youth engagement in peace building initiatives. So definitely, I think that answer is so important, recognizing the power that youth can have in these fields. I see that it is 10:30. So I just want to firstly extend my gratitude and gratefulness to you, Ivo Markovic, for your words today, for sharing your story, your experiences, and the work that you have continuously done all your life. James, do you want to say anything before we transition over to the next speaker?
I was just typing thank you again to you, Friar Ivo. It's so good to see you again, and really inspirational to hear from you today, and to get a little insight into, you know, the life that you have led and the work that you've done, which is so potent. I did send a greeting to Joyce Dubensky of Tannenbaum and sent her a picture of you joining us today. So I'm sure she'll be grateful to see that we're working together. But thank you again, and God bless, and I hope that we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, James, Miriam, and I excuse all participants because I was so unskillful using this sharing my screen. But I will send to you a link of Pontanima Symphony of Religions. I think it is very important how we heal with music, with spirituality of music, music of the religions, how we heal and reconcile people in Bosnia. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll be sure to share that before the closing today. So thank you very much, Ivo. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.